My name is Claire Bennett. And I'm about to tell you a secret that changed everything I believed in. It's not easy to share. But I know it's not something I can keep hidden forever. On May 4th, 2022, I had an experience that completely redefined what I thought was possible. For about 8 minutes, I was clinically dead, no heartbeat, no breathing. I can't remember it all. But I do remember very clearly what I learned about humanity and what will happen to us in the years to come. In 2025, I went to a place with a lot of bright light. It seemed like a place of love and forgiveness. For 8 minutes I was clinically dead. But it felt like a long time. I went through tunnels and tunnels. Let me tell you a little bit about the accident, why I had an NDE. I am an astrophysicist. My life revolves around formulas, data, and the mysteries of the universe. I have spent my career pursuing the great questions of our existence. But if someone had told me that one day I would be telling stories about death, resurrection, and a message from the Supreme Being, I would have thought they were joking. But there are things in life that go beyond theory and logic. It started out as a normal day. After weeks of stressing over my research project, I felt like I needed some space to sort out my thoughts. So I decided to go for an early morning hike. The mountain near my research facility is my go-to place whenever I want to get away from complicated numbers and graphs. The air was crisp. The mist hung in the trees. And the sounds of nature made everything seem quieter. I checked my watch, 5:08 a.m. Everything was fine. Until I stepped over the edge of a precarious section of the trail, where the fog obscured my vision. Then it happened. I slipped. The next moment, I remember plunging down a steep hillside, feeling nothing but sharp pain and total darkness. I thought it was the end. But it wasn't. Instead of eternal darkness, I opened my eyes to a place so strange that my mind can't describe it. If you believe in God and near-death experiences, subscribe to Heaven's Whisper channel today. Discover inspiring messages from God through powerful near-death stories that bring hope and understanding. Hit subscribe now and join us in spreading the light of faith. The first thing I felt was light. But this wasn't the light of the sun or any other light source we know. It was pure, warm, as if it contained life in every ray. The light not only illuminated the space around me, but also permeated me, dispelling all my pain and worries. I felt a sense of complete peace. The worries and burdens of life seemed to be washed away, leaving me with a feeling as if I had returned to where I belonged. As I stood there, trying to make sense of what was happening, everything around me suddenly became vibrant with vibrant colors, shades I had never seen in any other light spectrum. Even the air was filled with soft, deep music, as if the whole universe were singing. This was just the beginning of what I experienced. And I believed it was a message that needed to be shared. The music did not emanate from any particular direction. It surrounded me, flowing throughout the space as if it were coming from everywhere at once. It was not music as I had known it. It was like joy and love incarnated into sound. As I was immersed in the melody, a figure walked toward me. It was my father. He had passed away when I was a teenager. But now he looked healthy, vibrant, as if he were in the prime of his life. I recognized him immediately. His smile was just as I remembered it. But there was something else about him, a light, a purity that I couldn't quite put into words. "Claire," he said, his voice full of love and warmth. "You don't have to be afraid. He's waiting for you." Before I could ask what he meant, He gently reached out and touched my hand. In that moment, I felt an indescribable connection. It was as if every question I'd ever wanted to ask him was answered in silence. The feeling was both overwhelming and strangely comforting. "You need to see this," he said. His voice suddenly serious. The light around me grew brighter, more focused. And then I saw him, Jesus. No words could fully describe him. He was unlike any image or description I'd ever known. His presence was both human and divine. He radiated a love and power I had never felt before. His eyes held everything: compassion, wisdom, and a depth that seemed as if he saw not only who I was, but also my past and future. I knelt, not out of fear, but out of absolute humility before him. He gently placed his hand on my shoulder, his voice soft but full of authority. "Claire, there is something you must see. One thing humanity needs to know before I return." He then took me through 4 events. Each event appeared like a vivid picture, and each event was more extraordinary and serious than the last. In those images, I saw a great fire that occurred in 2025. The fire not only burned down bustling urban areas but also spread to desolate lands where nature once reigned in peace. The scene of devastation made me shiver. The sky was filled with black smoke. Red rays reflected from the raging fire, and the chaotic sound of collapse echoed everywhere. People ran in panic, and their cries for help seemed to echo into the sacred realm. However, what shocked me most was not only the physical destruction but also the message that God conveyed through those images. He said that this fire was not just the result of carelessness or natural disasters. It was a symbol of purity filter. A wake-up call that humanity needs to listen to in order to become more aware of its responsibility towards the world. God showed me that the root cause of this disaster lies in human greed, indifference, and lack of awareness. Modern civilization, with all its conveniences and advances, has made us forget the necessary harmony with nature. Instead of being grateful and protecting the living environment, we ruthlessly exploit it, making the earth no longer able to bear it. The fire of 2025 is not only a physical event but also a spiritual symbol, reflecting the damage that humans have caused to this planet. In the following images, I see a part of humanity beginning to awaken. After the disaster, many people returned to basic values: love, sharing, and gratitude towards nature. They began to rebuild from the ashes, not only physically but also spiritually. Small communities formed, where people lived in greater harmony with each other and the environment. Spiritual leaders emerged, leading humanity on a new path, where the balance between humans and nature was valued more than ever. In my second vision, I saw a world filled with busyness and noise. People were glued to their phones, tablets, and other technological devices, as if nothing mattered more than the news feed, photos, or likes on social media. They passed each other on the street, at meals, and even during moments that were supposed to be sacred. But their eyes never left the screen. I saw families sitting at the same table, but not a word was spoken. Friends meeting, but not sharing real joys or sorrows, but instead lost in their virtual worlds. I noticed something heartbreaking. They were no longer connected to each other, and even to themselves. Instead of taking time to reflect, pray, or enjoy the presence of others, they were caught up in the meaningless, the temporary, and the superficial. Jesus stood beside me, his eyes sad, but his voice full of authority. He said, "This is how the enemy works. He keeps them busy, engrossed in temporary things so that they forget what is truly important. The things they chase are illusions. And gradually, they lose the ability to hear my voice in their hearts." Those words were a powerful wake-up call. I looked back and saw that even strong believers were caught up in the whirlwind of distraction. They were preoccupied with superficial things, immersed in the noise of the world, forgetting about eternity. They forgot that life is not only about what they see, but also about a deep connection with God and with things divine, far beyond the temporary. "Claire," Jesus continued, his voice becoming more serious, "tell my people that it is time for them to wake up. Tell them to refocus their hearts and minds on me. Only when they turn back to me will they be able to see the truth and live the purpose I have for them." As he spoke, I sensed the importance of this message. It was not just a warning, but a call to action. He wanted me to remind people that they needed to put their priorities in the right place, to turn away from meaningless things, and to return to his presence. I understood that this distraction not only weakened their spirits, but also prevented them from entering into the full and fulfilling life that God had prepared. The light around me seemed to grow brighter, and I realized that this distraction was only the beginning of things to come. In the next vision, I witnessed a scene that was both beautiful and terrifying. Brilliant, magical lights danced across the sky, capturing the attention of the entire world. These lights were unlike any natural phenomenon I had ever seen. They radiated a surreal beauty, as if the entire sky was in harmony with a symphony of light. Then, from the rays of light, beings emerged. They did not resemble humans, but they were extremely alluring and majestic in appearance. These beings began to speak to humanity, their voices soft and enchanting, carrying a message of peace, unity, and enlightenment. They promised a world free of suffering, where humans could attain infinite knowledge and live in eternal prosperity. At first, I saw people listening in amazement and admiration. Even the faithful believers began to waver. They were fascinated by the beautiful words and majestic presence of these beings. But when I looked more closely, I realized a terrible truth: their words were cloaked in lies. Jesus stood beside me, his eyes solemn, and he said, "These creatures are not from me. They are deceivers, bringing confusion and lies. They will mix truth with lies to lead many astray. Even those strong in faith can be shaken if they do not hold fast to my word." I saw clearly the danger of these lies. They were not just empty promises, they were subtle weapons to strip away faith and obscure the truth. Their promises caused people to forget their dependence on God, and instead, they sought salvation from these creatures. Jesus continued, "Tell my people that my word alone is the unshakable foundation. Tell them to hold fast to my word, for the days ahead will be filled with deception. Whoever does not stand firm in my word will easily be swept away by this whirlwind and lose his soul." His words were engraved in my heart. I understood that this deception was not just a test, it was a spiritual battle. And to overcome it, one must be armed with the only truth, the Word of God. The light around me flared up again, and I felt the urgency of this message. The deception was not just a danger, it was a warning to those who were careless, easily drawn in by flashy appearances and empty promises. Then the final vision unfolded before me in an indescribable scene. The sky suddenly split open, and I saw Jesus appear in all his glory, accompanied by a vast army of angels, all shining like the light of the sun but not blinding. They appeared with majesty and authority, full of power but also exuding love and compassion. The entire world seemed to stop. All sound disappeared. And I saw everyone on earth fall to their knees. No one able to stand before such a powerful presence. For some, it was a beautiful and holy moment. I saw them raise their hands high, tears streaming down their faces as they worshipped and glorified him. They realized that he was the one they had waited for all their lives, and they rejoiced to be in his presence. But for others, it was a terrifying experience. They trembled, bowing their heads in fear, because they knew they had rejected him all their lives. Their eyes were filled with regret and despair as they realized that it was too late to change. Jesus turned to me, his gaze filled with both compassion and severity. He said, "This is what is coming. Every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess that I am Lord. But for many, it will be the end of grace. Tell them I am coming soon. Tell them to be ready. For no one knows the day or the hour." I saw the world in a state of shock and awe. There was nowhere to hide. Nothing to hide from his all-seeing gaze. The Lord's return was not a vague or distant concept, it was an inevitable reality. I realized that this vision was not just a warning, but a call to action. He wanted me to convey this message, so that people could prepare their hearts and live in awareness. "Claire," he said, his voice ringing like a bell through the air. "Tell them to be alert and stand firm. The faithful will receive an indescribable reward. I will come soon, and my glory will cover the whole earth." As the vision faded, I still knelt before him, overwhelmed by his majesty and immeasurable love. I knew that this was not just a dream or an illusion, it was a sure promise and a mission that I had to fulfill. The sky before me was ablaze, as if the entire universe was preparing for an unprecedented event. A loud bang, unlike any sound I had ever heard, tore through the air, and I saw the sky open. In that dazzling light, the Lord Jesus appeared, sitting on a cloud of glory. His light not only illuminated the world, but also penetrated every corner of the soul, as if it was peeling away all the hidden layers of humanity, revealing the true nature of each person. Following him was a vast army of angels, each shining like a star, carrying indescribable power and majesty. They surrounded the Lord, like an invincible army, preparing to carry out his will. This scene was beyond all imagination, making me feel like I was just a tiny grain of sand in the greatness of the universe. The entire world stopped. Every noise of daily life disappeared, and silence fell everywhere. I saw everyone, from the most powerful leaders to the poorest people, all kneeling, unable to stand before his majestic presence. There was no distinction of status, power, or fame, all were equal in the eyes of God. For the faithful believers, it was a moment they had waited their entire lives for. I saw them raise their hands high, tears streaming down their faces as they praised and worshipped him. For them, Jesus' return was not only a promise fulfilled, but also an affirmation that all their efforts, all their sacrifices, and all their faith had not been in vain. They welcomed him with joy like a lost son finally returning home. But for those who rejected him, it was an unspeakable horror. I saw them trembling, bowing their heads in fear, their eyes filled with regret and despair. They realized that everything they had denied was now the undeniable truth. They wanted to run, but there was nowhere to run. They wanted to turn back, But the door of grace was closed. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with both compassion and severity. He spoke, his voice booming like thunder. "Claire, this is what the world needs to know. I will return soon. And when I come, every knee will bow. Every tongue will confess that I am Lord. But for many, it will be a moment of joy, while for others, it will be a moment of terror." He continued, his voice becoming more urgent. "Tell my people that time is short. Tell them to prepare. For no one knows the day or hour of my coming. Encourage them to be vigilant, to live uprightly, and to hold fast to the faith. The reward of those who are faithful to me will be eternal life. But those who turn away will suffer eternal consequences." I saw an image of millions of souls standing before the throne, each facing the final judgment. I felt the weight of this vision. It was not just a warning, but a reminder of the seriousness of life's choices. Jesus paused, his eyes bright but full of compassion. He said, "My love never changes. I am always with those who seek me. But let it be clear that my grace does not last forever. When I return, their choices will be sealed forever. Whoever abides in me will have life. But whoever is far from me will suffer eternal separation." I felt the urgency of his words. This was not just a promise, but a command that needed to be communicated immediately. He wanted people to understand that his return was not a distant or fanciful story, but a certain and imminent reality. His last words were engraved in my heart. "Tell them that I see all their suffering, all their fear, and all their failures. I am the healer, the restorer, and the giver of life. But they must be ready, because when I come, there will be no second chance." As the vision began to fade, I remained on my knees before him, overwhelmed by the greatness and majesty. I understood that what I had just witnessed was the absolute truth, and that it was my mission to convey this message to everyone. The Great Return is not just a warning, but a call to change, to awaken, and to be ready. Those who are faithful will be welcomed into eternal glory, but those who turn away will choose eternal separation. That message was an urgent call for everyone to prepare their hearts, because time is running out. When I opened my eyes and returned to reality, my heart was filled with emotion. I knew that I had been given a mission that was not easy, but it was a mission that I could not refuse. I had seen the truth, and now was the time to act. "It's time for you to go back. Your work is not finished yet. Tell them I will be there soon," Jesus said. Everything changed. The bright colors, the music, the peace. Everything seemed to collapse inside as if being pulled through a pinhole of light. Then I felt a jolt, a pull, and a surge of feeling as I was brought back to my body. After that experience, my life entered a new chapter. I opened my eyes and found myself in the hospital. I remembered the moment I fell on a steep mountain road, when my body fell freely between sharp rocks and the afternoon sunlight shining through the thick fog. At that moment, I believed that I would never return. But then, a passerby found me, pulled me off the dangerous cliff and took me to the hospital immediately. I could barely move or speak, but the tears streaming down my face weren't from pain. They were from a profound, overwhelming gratitude, a sense of awe at the journey I had just undergone. I wanted to tell them, to shout my story to the world, but no words would come. Instead, I reached out and gripped the hand of one of the paramedics as tightly as I could. trying to convey through that single gesture everything I couldn't yet put into words. It was my way of saying, "Thank you for bringing me back," though I wasn't sure they could understand the depth of my emotions in that moment. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. Despite the traumatic accident, my recovery was nothing short of miraculous. Though I had been hit by a car, my injuries were far less severe than anyone could have imagined: fractured ribs, bruises, and a concussion. But no internal bleeding, no broken bones, and no spinal damage. The doctors were baffled, repeatedly describing my survival and rapid healing as incredible and unexplainable. But I knew the truth. Lying in that hospital bed during those early days, I replayed every moment of my experience in vivid detail. I could hear my Father's voice, feel the indescribable warmth of Jesus' presence, and see the visions of events yet to come. Each moment etched itself deeper into my heart, filling me with a clarity that couldn't be shaken. I understood that what had happened wasn't just for me. I had been entrusted with a message that had to be shared, no matter how difficult or unbelievable it might seem. My return to a normal life was anything but normal. Physically, I was healing faster than anyone expected. But emotionally and spiritually, I was grappling with the immense weight of what I had experienced. How could I explain something so profoundly otherworldly to people who might not understand? I decided to start with those closest to me, my family and my dearest friends. Some listened in awe, their eyes wide as I recounted the visions, the words of Jesus, and the overwhelming love I had felt. Others regarded me with quiet skepticism, unsure if my story was the result of trauma or an overactive imagination. I reminded myself of what Jesus had told me: some will doubt, and some will mock, but those with ears to hear will understand and prepare. The challenge wasn't just in sharing the experience, it was in living it. How could I go back to the routines of daily life, knowing what I now knew? Each morning, I woke with the memories fresh in my mind, and I asked myself, what can I do today to share this message? I began journaling, capturing every word, every image, and every feeling in vivid detail. I started praying like never before, not just for myself but for those I was meant to reach. I asked God to give me the strength and wisdom to speak when the time was right and to use me as an instrument for His purpose. As the days turned into weeks, opportunities began to unfold. Conversations I would never have initiated seemed to arise naturally. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers began opening up to me about their struggles, doubts, and fears. In those moments, I found the courage to share small pieces of my story, always mindful of Jesus' reassurance: the message is not yours to carry alone. My Spirit will guide you and give you the words when the time comes. Reactions varied. Some were deeply moved, while others hesitated, their skepticism evident. Yet even among the doubters, I noticed moments of reflection, subtle shifts in their expressions. I realized my role wasn't to convince but to plant seeds of thought and faith, trusting God to nurture them. As my strength returned, so did my resolve. I began speaking to small church groups, sharing my story over coffee with friends, and discussing it with curious medical colleagues. Each retelling deepened my connection to the message and the people I spoke to. Through these conversations, I saw lives touched, hearts softened, and even the most skeptical pause to consider something greater. Sharing my story became not just a duty, but a privilege, a chance to bring hope, plant seeds of faith, and trust that God would do the rest. But the journey wasn't without challenges. There were moments of doubt when I questioned my own sanity. What if they're right? I wondered. What if it wasn't real? In those moments, I would close my eyes and remember the light, the warmth of Jesus' presence, and the love that had filled every fiber of my being. This is real, I reminded myself. This is your purpose. I faced ridicule, too. Some dismissed my story outright, labeling it as nothing more than a hallucination or a near-death delusion, a trick of the mind triggered by trauma. Others openly questioned my motives, implying that I had fabricated a sensational tale, seeking either attention or personal gain. Their skepticism stung deeply, cutting into the vulnerable space I had opened by sharing my experience. Each dismissive comment stirred a storm of conflicting emotions within me: frustration at their refusal to listen, sadness over their unwillingness to believe, and, at times, a flicker of self-doubt that I couldn't fully suppress. I replayed their words in my mind, wondering if they might be right. What if it had all been a figment of my imagination? A desperate construct of a brain starved for oxygen. These thoughts lingered, heavy and unwelcome, threatening to undermine the clarity of what I had experienced so vividly. Yet, amid the pain of doubt and criticism, I found unexpected strength. The very questions that haunted me drove me back to prayer, where I sought reassurance from God. I recalled the light, the warmth, the overwhelming peace of that sacred encounter. And I held on to the words of Jesus: "Trust in my strength, not your own." Those words became my anchor, steadying me when I felt unmoored. I began to realize that doubt was not my enemy, it was a crucible, refining my faith and fortifying my purpose. The ridicule and skepticism I faced forced me to dig deeper, to examine the core of my belief, and to reaffirm the truth of what I had witnessed. Each moment of pain became an opportunity to lean more fully on God's strength, reminding me that this journey was not about seeking validation from others, but about remaining faithful to the message I had been given. In time, I came to see the ridicule not as a barrier but as a necessary challenge, one that drew me closer to God and strengthened my resolve. It taught me that faith is not about certainty in the eyes of others, it's about standing firm in the face of doubt, knowing that the truth is unshakable, no matter how many voices rise against it. Each time I encountered criticism, I retreated to prayer, drawing on the unwavering assurance of Jesus' words: "Trust in my strength, not your own." I reminded myself that the truth of my experience didn't depend on others' acceptance. My task wasn't to prove anything, it was simply to be faithful to the message I'd been entrusted with. Over time, I came to understand that my story wasn't just about the extraordinary moments I had witnessed. It was about the quiet, deliberate choices I made each day to align my life with the truth I had seen. Faith isn't built in a single revelation but through the consistent practice of living according to it. It meant finding the courage to speak, even when my voice trembled, and choosing love and patience when met with skepticism or dismissal. As I continued to share my story, I realized that my role was not to convince others but to plant seeds of thought and reflection. Some seeds would take root quickly, while others might lie dormant for years. That wasn't for me to control, it was in God's hands. My role was to live authentically and courageously, trusting that the message would reach those it was meant for. This journey has taught me profound lessons about faith and resilience. Faith isn't about having all the answers or living a life free from doubt, it's about trusting in the one who holds the answers, even when the path ahead feels unclear. It's about standing firm in the face of mockery, persecution, and uncertainty, knowing that God's promises are unshakable and His love unfailing. There are still days when doubt whispers in the quiet corners of my mind. What if it wasn't real? What if they're right? In those moments, I close my eyes and remember the warmth of the light, the overwhelming peace, and the voice of Jesus that resonated through every fiber of my being. This is real. I remind myself, this is your purpose. Every morning, I wake with a renewed sense of mission, aware that I am a small but vital part of a greater plan. I understand now that my life is no longer solely my own, it is intertwined with the lives of those I am called to reach. Each day, I ask God for guidance and strength to walk this path, knowing that the work is far from easy. And yet, the challenges bring clarity. I've come to cherish the moments of difficulty, for they have drawn me closer to God. Through ridicule and doubt, I've discovered a deeper reliance on His strength and a clearer understanding of my purpose. Every time I share my story, whether with a friend over coffee, a small group at church, or even a stranger who crosses my path, I pray that my words touch hearts. I pray that those who hear will find a spark of hope, a moment of reflection, or even the courage to seek a deeper connection with God. The work is humbling and often heavy, but it is also filled with moments of indescribable grace. I've learned that faith requires perseverance, not perfection, courage, not certainty. Each step forward, no matter how small, is a testament to God's faithfulness and love. Even when fear and doubt creep in, I hold firmly to His promise, "You are never alone. I am always with you." Those words echo in my heart, a constant reminder that I do not walk this path by myself. Through every trial, every challenge, and every triumph, His presence sustains me. If you believe in God and near-death experiences, subscribe to Heaven's Whisper channel today. Discover inspiring messages from God through powerful near-death stories that bring hope and understanding. Hit subscribe now and join us in spreading the light of faith.